The morning sun glinted off fresh snow as Isabel Rodriguez made her way down the plush corridor of the Grand Alpine Resort's exclusive Pinnacle wing. 6 years as head of housekeeping had trained her to respect the sacred rhythms of the wealthy guests who paid $2,000 per night for these suites. Today, however, something felt different. Suite 712, the Winterbloom Suite, should have displayed its "Do Not Disturb" sign until at least noon. The Winters couple had celebrated their 5th anniversary last night with a private dinner and vintage champagne. Yet the sign was absent, and no response came to her gentle knocking at 10:17 a.m. "Housekeeping," Isabel called again, her master key hovering near the electronic lock. When silence persisted, she reluctantly swiped the card. The mechanical whir of the door's unlock mechanism seemed unnaturally loud in the hushed hallway. "Mr. and Mrs. Winters. Housekeeping." Her voice trailed off as the heavy door swung inward, releasing a gust of frigid air that immediately struck her as wrong. In December in Aspen, guests typically overheated their rooms, not left balcony doors open to the 20-degree mountain air. The expansive living area was immaculate but unsettlingly quiet, crystal flutes still bearing traces of champagne positioned on the coffee table, an abandoned cashmere throw draped across the leather sofa, the fireplace cold with remnants of last night's embers. Nothing seemed overtly amiss until Isabel's gaze drifted to the master bedroom's partially open door, where a woman's pale hand lay visible against the cream-colored carpet. Isabel felt her heart stutter. "Senora Winters," she whispered, already knowing she wouldn't receive an answer. Emily Winters lay sprawled beside the king-sized bed, her silk nightgown arranged with an almost artistic precision around her slender body. Her auburn hair fanned out like a dark halo, contrasting starkly with her alabaster skin, now drained of all color except for the faint blue tinge around her slightly parted lips. A prescription bottle rested on its side on the nightstand, several white pills scattered across the polished mahogany surface. Beside it stood an empty crystal tumbler bearing traces of amber liquid and a clear fingerprint in what appeared to be lip gloss or balm. The balcony door stood ajar, allowing wisps of mountain air to stir the gauzy curtains in a ghostly dance. Isabel didn't scream. Her training took over as she backed carefully out of the room, her shaking hand already reaching for the radio clip to her uniform. "Security to Winterbloom Suite immediately," she managed, her voice impressively steady despite the tremor in her fingers. "And please contact Mr. Winters. Tell him to return to the room right away." Only after ending the transmission did she notice the curious absence of Mr. Winters, who according to last night's staff notes had not left the resort grounds. The couple's romantic breakfast in bed, scheduled for delivery at 10:30, would never be served. Within 11 minutes, the pristine sanctuary of Suite 712 transformed into a flurry of controlled chaos. Resort security arrived first, followed by the general manager, Julian Blackwood, who immediately called 911 upon confirming Isabel's grim discovery. As sirens wailed in the distance, climbing the winding road up to the exclusive mountainside property, Marcus Winters burst through the door, his face flushed from exertion, clad in expensive ski gear suggesting he'd been enjoying the fresh powder on the slopes. His initial confusion gave way to disbelief, then collapsed into what appeared to be genuine anguish as he was prevented from entering the bedroom where his wife lay. "Emily! Emily!" His voice cracked as security staff physically restrained him from contaminating what was quickly becoming a potential crime scene. "I just left her sleeping, she was fine when I left for my morning ski." His words dissolved into incoherent protests as the first Aspen police officers arrived, bringing with them the clinical efficiency that would strip away the veneer of luxury to reveal the stark tragedy beneath. Outside, the brilliant Colorado sun continued to shine on the pristine slopes, oblivious to the darkness that had descended within one of the resort's most coveted suites. Detective Abigail Lawson of the Aspen Police Department had investigated deaths at luxury resorts before: overdoses, heart attacks, even the occasional suicide when the pressure of maintaining the perfect life became too much, but something about the scene in the Winterbloom Suite immediately triggered her investigative instincts. The contrast between the meticulously staged room and the disarray of the victim's final moments felt calculated rather than circumstantial. "Time of discovery?" she asked, pulling on latex gloves as she surveyed Emily Winter's body without touching anything. 10:17 a.m. by housekeeping, replied Officer Daniels, who had been first on scene. Husband claims he left her sleeping around 8:30 to hit the slopes. No signs of forced entry. Resort security confirms his key card accessed the fitness center at 8:36, and he rented ski equipment at 9:05. He nodded toward the living area, where Marcus Winters sat hunched on a leather sofa, a resort security officer monitoring him discreetly. "He's pretty torn up. Claims they were celebrating their anniversary, says she seemed happy last night." The medical examiner, Dr. Catry, looked up from her preliminary examination. "Deceased is a Caucasian female, early to mid-30s, no obvious trauma visible. Some discoloration around the lips consistent with certain medications or toxins. Petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes. Lividity suggests she hasn't been moved post-mortem. Based on body temperature and rigor, death occurred between midnight and 4 a.m. She gestured to the prescription bottle. Lorazepam prescribed to Emily Winters by Dr. Samuel Thorpe, New York City psychiatrist. Bottle indicates it was filled 2 weeks ago, originally contained 30 tablets, approximately 12 to 15 missing by my count. Detective Lawson nodded, then turned her attention to the suite itself, where forensic technicians were methodically processing the scene. 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, a room service tray with the remnants of an elaborate dinner, a scattered collection of anniversary cards, one still in an unsealed envelope. More telling was the open laptop on the writing desk, screen dark but power light still blinking, and beside it, partially concealed under a resort brochure, a crumpled printout of what appeared to be financial statements. Lawson carefully lifted the brochure with her pen to reveal bold red numbers and warning notices from Citibank. "Bag the glasses, the prescription bottle, and the tumbler for prints and residue testing," Lawson instructed. "I want the contents of the laptop mirrored before we power it down, and get me the resort security footage for the past 24 hours. She moved to the closet, noting the meticulously organized designer clothes, hers color-coordinated, his arranged by type, and the Louis Vuitton luggage neatly stacked in the corner. Inside Emily's handbag, Lawson discovered an envelope containing museum letterhead. The letter inside announced Emily's appointment as senior curator at the Whitney Museum of American Art, effective January 15, 2020, just 3 weeks away. As the investigation progressed, hotel staff provided crucial context. The couple had arrived yesterday afternoon for a 3-night stay, part of what Mr. Winters had described as a second honeymoon when booking the $12,000 package that included private dining, couples massages, and champagne service. The reservations manager recalled how Marcus had specified every detail, from the exact arrangement of white roses in the suite to the vintage of wine served with dinner, but mentioned that during check-in, Emily had seemed subdued, even distracted, checking her phone repeatedly while Marcus handled the formalities. More illuminating was the statement from Alexis Morgan, the waitress who had served their anniversary dinner. They ordered the tasting menu with wine pairings, but Mrs. Winters barely touched her food or wine, Alexis reported. Mr. Winters kept encouraging her to eat, saying things like, "You need to keep your strength up for our new chapter." When he excused himself to use the restroom, Mrs. Winters asked me if I could arrange for a taxi to take her to the airport in the morning. She seemed anxious. When Mr. Winters returned, she immediately changed the subject to the artwork in the dining room. By late afternoon, what had initially appeared to be a potential suicide began to transform under Detective Lawson's scrutiny. The toxicology rush order revealed elevated levels of lorazepam in the partially consumed drink on the nightstand, far exceeding therapeutic dosage, while Emily's fingerprints were notably absent from both the glass and the prescription bottle. Most damning was the discovery of deleted emails recovered from Emily's laptop, revealing a string of communications with prominent New York attorney Diana Goldberg regarding divorce proceedings scheduled to begin after the new year. The final piece clicked into place when Detective Lawson received Marcus Winter's hastily requested alibi confirmation. The resort's camera system showed him entering the fitness center at 8:36 a.m. but exiting through an emergency stairwell just 3 minutes later, his ski equipment rental occurring through a voucher rather than in person. Marcus Winters had made sure to be seen entering public spaces but had created no digital footprint of actually remaining there. Emily Ashford and Marcus Winters met at a Metropolitan Museum of Art benefit gala in spring 2014, their chance encounter orchestrated by the New York social scene that both navigated with practiced ease. Emily, then 29, was making waves as an assistant curator with a particular talent for discovering overlooked contemporary artists. Marcus, 31, exuded the confidence of a financial analyst whose Morgan Stanley portfolio consistently outperformed market expectations. Their courtship unfolded against the backdrop of Manhattan's elite cultural world, opening nights at galleries in Chelsea, private viewings of auction house treasures, weekends in the Hamptons discussing art investments while connections were forged and appearances maintained. They were the perfect match on paper, recalled Caroline Delaney, Emily's former colleague at the Guggenheim. Emily had the artistic eye and cultural connections, Marcus had the financial acumen to translate her talent into investment opportunities for his clients. They were both ambitious, attractive, and seemed genuinely in love during those early years. Their wedding at the New York Botanical Garden had been featured in Vogue, with Emily in Vera Wang and Marcus in bespoke Tom Ford, surrounded by arrangements of white peonies and an A-list of Manhattan society. The newlyweds purchased a Tribeca loft and set about creating what appeared to be an ideal life together, their Instagram feeds documenting gallery openings, charity benefits, and perfectly styled vacations. Beneath the curated images, however, the foundation was already beginning to crack. Marcus had climbed rapidly at Morgan Stanley by taking increasingly aggressive positions for his wealthy clients, building a reputation for delivering exceptional returns that attracted old money and nouveau riche alike. Those who worked closely with him noted his growing obsession with maintaining his performance metrics at any cost. Marcus was charming to clients and ruthless to colleagues, said Thomas Reynolds, a former analyst who had worked under him. He cultivated this image of infallibility. Any suggestion that one of his investment strategies might be too risky was taken as a personal attack. By 2017, nobody dared question his decisions, which is exactly when they should have been under the most scrutiny. Emily's career trajectory moved in parallel but opposite directions. Her specialized knowledge of emerging artists and exceptional eye positioned her as a rising star in New York's competitive art world. By their third anniversary, she had been recruited by the prestigious Werner Gallery in Soho, where owner Richard Werner, a billionaire art collector with an unparalleled private collection, became both her mentor and champion. Under Werner's guidance, Emily curated several groundbreaking exhibitions that attracted international attention, and by early 2019, she had become the gallery's most valuable asset, with whispers that larger institutions were circling with offers. The disparity in their trajectories became evident at social functions by late 2018, observed Sophia Blackwell, who moved in the same circles. Emily was increasingly sought after for her expertise, while Marcus seemed to grow more controlling of their interactions. He'd interrupt when she was speaking with potential employers, redirect conversations to his latest investment successes, or simply insist they leave events early when Emily was clearly engaged in important professional networking. Friends noted that Emily began attending certain gallery functions alone, explaining Marcus's absence as work commitments, while Marcus started checking her phone when he thought she wasn't looking. The real crisis emerged in early 2019, though it remained invisible to all but a handful of insiders. Markets had turned against several of Marcus's major positions, resulting in substantial losses for his clients. Rather than acknowledging the setbacks, Marcus doubled down, moving funds between accounts and falsifying performance reports to maintain his reputation. He was essentially running a mini Ponzi scheme, explained federal investigator Gerald Thompson, who would later examine the case files. Using new client investments to cover losses and withdrawals from existing clients, while fabricating statements showing continued growth. Classic fraud pattern, but executed with enough sophistication to avoid immediate detection. As Marcus spiraled deeper into financial deception, his paranoia about Emily's relationship with Richard Werner intensified. Werner, 58 and twice divorced, had taken a special interest in Emily's career, offering opportunities to curate international exhibitions and introducing her to his extensive network of collectors and museum directors. Their professional interactions were frequent and often extended into late dinners to discuss acquisition strategies or exhibition concepts. Though all evidence indicated their relationship was strictly professional, Marcus became convinced otherwise. He installed spyware on Emily's phone, monitored her emails, and began creating elaborate spreadsheets documenting her movements, calls, and meetings with Werner. By autumn 2019, the convergence of Marcus's financial fraud and obsessive jealousy created a psychological pressure cooker. Emily had received a formal offer from the Whitney Museum, a career-defining opportunity that would provide institutional prestige and significantly higher compensation. The position would also require extensive travel for acquisitions and collaborations with other institutions, representing the independence that Emily had increasingly sought. Marcus, meanwhile, had received the first ominous signals that his financial house of cards was collapsing. A major client had requested a complete withdrawal for estate planning purposes, funds Marcus did not have liquid access to without revealing his scheme. In November, Emily met discreetly with attorney Diana Goldberg to discuss divorce options. Her private journal, later recovered from a password-protected file on her laptop, revealed her growing awareness of Marcus's controlling behavior. "I've built a cage of success and can't find the door," she wrote on November 12. "M monitors everything, my calls, emails, even my Uber history. Richard says the Whitney position is my chance to rebuild. I'll tell M after the new year, once the contract is finalized. I still care for him, but I can't sacrifice my life to maintain his illusion of control." What Emily couldn't have known was that Marcus had already intercepted fragments of her communications with Goldberg, fueling his conviction that her career advancement and planned departure were directly connected to a romantic relationship with Werner. The anniversary trip to Aspen, Marcus's suggestion, planned with uncharacteristic attention to romantic details, was presented as a celebration of their 5 years together and a chance to disconnect before the holiday social season. For Emily, it represented a final effort to find closure on a relationship that had once held such promise. For Marcus, facing financial ruin and convinced of his wife's betrayal, it became something far more calculated, an opportunity to solve both problems permanently, in a setting where his meticulous planning could control every variable. December 18, 2019, 7:45 a.m., Emily awoke in their Tribeca loft to find Marcus already dressed in the Tom Ford suit she'd given him last Christmas, preparing a rare breakfast of avocado toast and fresh squeezed orange juice. "Happy anniversary trip day," he announced with unusual cheerfulness, placing a small blue Tiffany box beside her coffee cup. Inside was a platinum bracelet with a diamond snowflake charm. "For our Aspen adventure," he explained, fastening it around her wrist. Emily felt a pang of guilt about the divorce papers hidden in Diana Goldberg's office, but rationalized that the trip could still be a positive memory, a gentle conclusion rather than a bitter ending. "It's beautiful, Marcus." "Thank you," she said, kissing him briefly, not noticing how he studied her reaction with calculated intensity. 10:30 a.m., their private car arrived to take them to Teterboro Airport, where Marcus had arranged a chartered flight to Aspen. During the drive, Emily received a text from Richard Werner confirming her Whitney contract had been finalized with all requested terms accepted. "Just need your signature when you're back. Congratulations again. This position was made for you." She quickly replied with thanks, then deleted the conversation, unaware that Marcus had installed monitoring software that had already captured the exchange. In the adjacent seat, Marcus maintained an animated conversation about their dinner reservations at the resort, while silently calculating how the disappearance of his wife would affect the timeline of the pending financial investigations. 2:15 p.m., the Grand Alpine Resort signature black Range Rover collected them from Aspen's private aviation terminal. As they wound their way up the mountain road, enormous snowflakes began to fall, creating a picturesque winter scene. "Just as I ordered," Marcus joked, squeezing Emily's hand with what appeared to be genuine affection. Emily found herself remembering why she had fallen in love with him: his ability to create perfect moments, his attention to detail, the charm that could still surface like sunlight breaking through clouds. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if she was making a mistake in leaving. Perhaps they could rebuild. She pushed the thought away, remembering the controlling behaviors that had intensified over the past year, the constant monitoring, the subtle isolating from friends. The Whitney offer represented freedom she wasn't willing to sacrifice. 5:40 p.m., after check-in and a couple's massage that Emily found herself surprisingly able to enjoy, they returned to the Winterbloom suite to prepare for dinner. Marcus opened a bottle of Dom Perignon while Emily showered, pouring her a glass and suggesting she wear the red Valentino dress he'd always loved. "Tonight is about celebrating us, everything we've built together," he said, touching her cheek in a gesture that felt both tender and possessive. Emily sipped the champagne, unaware that Marcus had already prepared for later by crushing 2 of her prescribed lorazepam tablets and dissolving them in the bottle of Macallan 18 she occasionally enjoyed before bed. His preparations had been meticulous, including researching drug interactions and practicing how to arrange her body to suggest a self-administered overdose. 8:15 p.m., at the resort's exclusive Summit restaurant, the tension between them fluctuated throughout the 7-course tasting menu. Emily picked at her food, her thoughts repeatedly drifting to the Whitney position and the new life awaiting her in January. Marcus dominated the conversation, reminiscing about their early dating days and making elaborate plans for a summer trip to the Amalfi Coast, plans he knew would never materialize. When Emily's phone buzzed with a text from Werner, "Just heard from the board chairman, they're thrilled about your acceptance," Marcus noticed her expression brighten before she quickly put the phone away. "Work never stops, does it?" he remarked, his tone light but eyes hard. "Not even for our anniversary." 9:50 p.m., returning to their suite after dinner, Marcus suggested nightcaps by the fireplace. Emily, feeling the weight of her secrets and the strain of maintaining appearances, agreed. As Marcus poured her a generous measure of the doctored Macallan, she made a decision to be partially honest. "I've been offered a position at the Whitney," she said, watching his expression carefully. "Senior curator, starting next month. It's an incredible opportunity." Marcus's face revealed nothing as he handed her the glass. "Congratulations," he said flatly. "Richard Werner's influence, I assume." The way he emphasized Werner's name carried unmistakable implications. Emily felt the familiar tightening in her chest that preceded their arguments about her mentor. "This is about my work, Marcus. My talent. Not everything in my life revolves around men pulling strings." 11:20 p.m., the argument escalated after Emily's third Macallan, the concentrated lorazepam beginning to affect her coordination and speech. When she mentioned the travel requirements of the new position, Marcus abandoned all pretense of support. "You think I don't know what's really happening? The late meetings, the weekend acquisition trips with Werner." He pulled out his phone and showed her the spreadsheet he'd created documenting her movements for the past 6 months. Emily stared in horror at the meticulous record of her life, time-stamped entries of her arrivals and departures, calls, lunch meetings, even notes about her clothing choices. "You've been spying on me?" she asked, her voice slurring slightly from the drugged whiskey. "This is exactly why I'm leaving you, Marcus." 12:05 a.m., December 19th, the admission hung in the air between them. Marcus went very still, his expression shifting from anger to something colder. "Leaving me?" he repeated. "So there is something going on with Werner." Emily struggled to stand, suddenly aware of how heavily the alcohol and unknown sedative were affecting her. "I've spoken with a lawyer," she said, gripping the back of a chair for support. "After the holidays, I'm filing for divorce. This isn't about Richard, it's about us. What we've become." She didn't see the calculation in Marcus's eyes as he processed this new information. The divorce would expose his financial situation even sooner than he'd feared. He helped her to the bedroom, his manner suddenly solicitous. "You're not well, Em. We'll talk in the morning when you're thinking clearly." 12:40 a.m., Emily lay on the bed, consciousness fading as the combination of alcohol and lorazepam overwhelmed her system. Marcus sat beside her, scrolling through her phone he'd unlocked using her face while she was semi-conscious. The text exchange with Werner confirmed the Whitney position but revealed nothing romantic, frustrating his need to justify his actions. He then found emails to Diana Goldberg discussing division of assets and Emily's concern about financial irregularities she'd noticed in their joint accounts. Marcus realized she knew more about his precarious situation than he'd suspected. Through the haze of sedation, Emily mumbled, always controlling, "Can't breathe." Her breathing had become dangerously shallow, the double dose of lorazepam interacting with the alcohol exactly as Marcus had researched. 1:17 a.m., Marcus made his final decision as he watched Emily struggle to breathe. Rather than allowing the overdose to take its natural course, which might leave room for medical intervention if discovered too soon, he took the decorative pillow from beside her. "I gave you everything," he whispered, pressing it firmly over her face. Emily's drugged state prevented significant resistance, though her body instinctively fought for air. Marcus maintained the pressure, his financial analyst's mind calculating how her death would solve his immediate problems. The life insurance policy would cover the client withdrawal that threatened to expose his fraud, while eliminating the risk of her divorcing him and potentially discovering the full extent of his financial crimes. After 3 minutes of ensuring no oxygen reached her, Marcus felt her body go limp. 2:35 a.m., with clinical precision, Marcus arranged the scene. He placed the prescription bottle on the nightstand, spilled several pills beside it, and positioned the tumbler with remaining traces of the drugged whiskey near Emily's hand, which he'd used to create a smeared fingerprint on the glass. He carefully wiped his own prints from the surfaces he'd touched, opened the balcony door slightly to establish a plausible explanation for the room's temperature, and rumpled the bed to suggest she'd gotten up disoriented before collapsing. He then changed into pajamas and lay on the sofa in the suite's living room, setting his phone alarm for 8:20 a.m. 8:30 a.m., December 19th, Marcus enacted the final phase of his plan, changing into ski clothes and deliberately making himself visible to resort staff as he left for the slopes, ensuring his key card registered at the fitness center before slipping out through an emergency exit. He arranged for ski equipment rental via voucher rather than in person, then waited in a secluded area of the resort grounds until enough time had passed to make his absence seem legitimate. His calculated risk was that Emily's body wouldn't be discovered until housekeeping arrived, giving the impression that she had died while he was innocently enjoying the famous Aspen powder. By then, the narrative would be established: a troubled woman with a prescription for anxiety medication had mixed pills with alcohol while her husband was absent, resulting in a tragic accident or possible suicide. Marcus Winters was arrested at 7:15 p.m. on December 19, 2019, approximately 9 hours after Emily's body was discovered. The breaking point in Detective Lawson's investigation came when forensic analysts recovered deleted security footage from the resort's secondary system, showing Marcus returning to the Winterbloom suite at 9:42 a.m., well before he had discovered his wife's body upon being summoned by security. When confronted with this evidence, along with preliminary toxicology reports showing lethal levels of lorazepam and traces of his DNA beneath Emily's fingernails, Marcus's carefully constructed demeanor crumbled. "She was going to ruin everything," he reportedly told detectives during his initial questioning. 15 years building my reputation, and she was going to throw it all away for Werner and that museum job." The case immediately captured national attention, with major news outlets descending on Aspen to cover what was dubbed the Alpine Anniversary Murder. The combination of wealth, betrayal, and a picturesque luxury setting created irresistible tabloid fodder. "Finance whiz kills curator wife in Aspen love triangle," screamed the New York Post headline, while more serious publications explored the psychological dimensions of the crime. The New Yorker published a detailed profile titled "The Performance of Perfection," Marcus Winters and the deadly costs of maintaining appearances, examining how social media culture and Manhattan's elite expectations had contributed to the pressure cooker that exploded in Suite 712. As Marcus awaited trial in the Pitkin County Detention Center, the full extent of his financial crimes came to light. SEC investigators discovered he had misappropriated approximately $37 million from client accounts, using increasingly complex transactions to hide the mounting losses from his high-risk investment strategies. It was one of the most sophisticated fraud schemes we've seen from an individual operator, explained SEC Enforcement Director Stephanie Avakian at a press conference. Winters created elaborate false statements, forged documentation, and maintained parallel records to conceal the massive shortfalls. Several of Marcus's former clients, including prominent New York families and 2 Hollywood producers, initiated civil proceedings against both him and Morgan Stanley, claiming the firm had failed in its supervisory obligations. Meanwhile, a deeper picture of Emily emerged through interviews with colleagues and friends. The narrative of a love triangle with Richard Werner quickly disintegrated as evidence confirmed their relationship had been strictly professional. Instead, court filings revealed Emily's growing awareness of Marcus's controlling behavior and her carefully planned exit strategy. Diana Goldberg released, with court approval, email exchanges documenting Emily's concerns about Marcus's increasing paranoia and obsessive monitoring of her activities. The Whitney Museum established a fellowship in Emily's name for emerging female curators, while Richard Werner donated a significant collection of contemporary works to the institution in her memory. The trial began in September 2020, with prosecutors presenting a devastating case built on forensic evidence, financial records, and Marcus's own digital footprint. The defense initially attempted to portray Emily as depressed and self-destructive, but this strategy collapsed when her therapist testified that Emily had been actively planning her future and displayed no suicidal ideation. Marcus's own meticulous nature proved his undoing. Investigators had recovered his deleted search history revealing queries about undetectable poisons, lorazepam fatal dose, and how to make murder look like suicide. Most damning was a draft email found in his deleted files, addressed to himself and titled Contingency Plan, which outlined various scenarios for eliminating the GE problem before financial disclosure would become necessary. After 7 weeks of testimony, including a particularly emotional day when Emily's parents took the stand to describe their daughter's passion for art and excitement about her new position, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on charges of first-degree murder, fraud, and obstruction of justice. On November 17, 2020, Judge Catherine Mendoza sentenced Marcus Winters to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. "You extinguished a brilliant light not only because of jealousy, but to preserve a fiction of success that existed only in your own mind," Judge Mendoza stated during sentencing. "Your meticulous planning demonstrates a chilling capacity for calculation that makes you particularly dangerous to society." 1 year after Emily's death, a retrospective exhibition of the artists she had championed opened at the Whitney Museum. Emerging Visions, The Emily Winters Legacy, featured works from 23 contemporary artists whose careers Emily had advanced through her curatorial work. The exhibition catalog included an essay by Richard Werner that perhaps best summarized the tragedy's lasting impact. Emily Winters saw beauty and potential where others saw only the ordinary. She recognized authentic talent in overlooked corners of the art world, just as she believed in the potential for genuine connection in an increasingly transactional society. The ultimate tragedy is not just that her life was cut short, but that she was killed by the very person who should have most celebrated her vision, a partner who could only see her success as a threat to his own carefully constructed facade. In a final irony that Emily would never know, the investigation into Marcus's financial crimes revealed that despite his desperate measures, exposure had been inevitable. 3 days before their Aspen trip, the SEC had already flagged his trading patterns for investigation. The federal case would have been opened regardless of Emily's departure or discovery of his fraud. In the safety deposit box Emily maintained separately from their joint accounts, authorities found documentation suggesting she had indeed noticed discrepancies in their finances, but rather than exposing Marcus immediately, she had planned to offer him a dignified opportunity to address the issues during their divorce. The mercy she had intended to show him was the very thing he never considered extending to her. Today, the Grand Alpine Resort's Winterbloom Suite has been permanently redesignated and extensively remodeled. The resort donated the entire amount of the winter's stay to a domestic violence prevention organization, while Emily's family established a foundation that provides legal assistance to individuals seeking to leave controlling relationships. Marcus Winters remains at the Colorado State Penitentiary, his appeals exhausted, his once brilliant financial career reduced to a cautionary tale taught in business ethics courses. And in gallery spaces across New York, artists Emily discovered continue to create work that extends her vision beyond the alpine abyss that claimed her life but could not diminish her legacy.